allows the vehicle to translate the plate like this as you steer it. There's no truck steers perfectly straight, okay? We have casters built in, so it's straight. So keep these clean. Keep that surface clean, keep that surface clean. The other rest of it's pretty much sealed. You may have to blow it off from there to get a lot of crust down there, but most of it's pretty maintenance free down there. But this part you want to keep clean, okay? So why don't we start the truck up and pull forward? You do the drive on that. I'm going to have you just touch the plate and we'll make sure we're equal, okay? Well, we only move about 6 inches to start. Okay, so let's get sensors mounted. What you guys have is 3 types of sensors. You got fronts. If you look at this, it's got a sticker on it that says that's the front of the truck, and I'm a front sensor. Pretty hard to mess that up, right? That's your front sensor. This is a middle sensor. It has a blue sticker saying that's the front of the truck, and I'm a middle sensor. Rear sensors, white sticker, back of the truck. You go in front of the truck that way, I'm at the back of the truck. Okay. Hard to mess it up. Now, if you're going to do a box truck, it's just 2 axles, you're not going to use the middles, you're just going to use the fronts and the rears. Okay? Please pay attention to this, guys. This is the #1 killer of this system. You see that silver block in the back of that middle sensor there?
Yep.
See that hole in the middle?
Yep.
That's an eyeball. It's a sensor, it's an emitter, it's looking. Dumbasses, don't be one of them. We'll take this cord, plug it in the back of that sensor, and make the sensor blind. Open your eye out. Power goes in where the power turns on.
Okay.
Okay? Power goes in where the power turns on. I'm making a point of this for a reason, guys. This happens a lot. Like, I'll have a system for a year, gets a new tech in on second shift, and the first thing he does is poke out the eyeballs. Now we got to repair it, calibrate it, and it's not cheap to do that, okay? Okay. So, the way we can hang sensors, we have these kind of spade caps, which are great for getting between the wheel and the tire. You can use these long brackets on the front, or if one of you guys wants to grab a bracket off the back of the cabinet there, you can use the mini clamps. With this, if you guys are all running these type of little wheel covers, you're probably going to struggle getting those on there, because these go all the way into the inboard side, or you take that off, right? You might be able to get the long clamps to fit over these lug covers. So let's try that. We're going to grab the outside of the wheel in, put it on there, kind of snug it up, and kind of bump it in place. Okay. Pretty simple. And this should be free, ready to go. All right. And then the rears and the middles mount the same way. You're just going to make sure that this middle one, you got to keep it straight up and down, guys. Okay, it's got to be vertical. You can't have it at an angle. It's got to be vertical. Middles, rears and fronts, if you're a little crooked, that's okay, because these are hub-centric. Where this guy, you can see he's offset from the center. So let's see if we can figure out how to mount him. Get him on there. Got plenty of guys. Everybody grab a sensor. Don't forget to unplug it before you take it off. The rear is going to be super easy to mount. The front is going to be a little struggle.
That would be a bad time to drop him.
Yeah, now you can take that sensor off. Don't unclamp that little can clamp that's there. You can slide the sensor off, keep cracking on without risking the damage to the sensor. If you have to pound them, you can use a rubber mallet to seat them, but take the sensor off before you beat on them, okay? Don't beat on them with the sensor on the bracket. Because it'll shake shit loose inside there. It's a bad thing, okay?
What about the steer axle? Is that a different style on these?
Steer axle.
Okay.
So yeah, it's if you can't get the suitcase style, then get, and that's the two sides. This is the bigger one. That's a 6-inch span. Okay. They're making it a 4-inch. That's yeah, it's a bigger span. Or the universal.
So don't worry about the steer axle yet.
Yeah, steer
like a white style though.
Well, yeah, that's going to be for doing caster adjust, which you should almost never have to do a caster adjust.
Okay.
Occasionally you will, but it's very, very rare. Maybe 1 in 1,000 times.
Okay. All right. So really, these suitcase ones are going to be the majority of the time.
90% of the time, we're just going to be doing thrust, scrub, and tone. That's it. So, who's feeling really heavy tonight and strong? That barrel's going to have to move.
How often is it calibrated?
Used properly with good care, not dropped on the floor. 200 to 300 alignments. The biggest thing is always starts with crazy numbers. You'll know what normal
Yeah, when
looks
stuff
like.
seems really out of whack,
Yeah.
that it shouldn't
Turn
be.
it on.
Yeah.
Much better turn them off.
Is this for anything? Or?
Nah, that's for when we use stuff like this. That kid was not really. So that was just sort of the sensor came off and the fall from 5 feet or 6 feet out and rolled. It's just old school thought. It's something that evolved very slowly in the country. That's one of them. So. Alright, let's do that. Here's what we got going on. You want to make sure they're tight and they're not in the room. Drive. That's fine as long as it's straight. It doesn't turn or left. You can use it. If you happen to do any of these guys, trailers, you have a spot for that too. Semi-trailer, right? You see you got 1 rear, 2 rear, if you got any pups, 2 rears, 3 rears, with a rear stitch, and you got steering. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. This is what you're going to do all the time for your fleet. And if you notice, I'll go enter, and it'll say last rear reference. The same rules apply. If that rear axle is fixed, doesn't lift up and down or steer, you can use it as a reference point. Okay? That's it. So go ahead and scroll back up to truck with 1 front, 2 rear.
So with that, if the rear axle is a lift axle,
Can't
you just
use-
use the front?
Yeah, what does it just change the order of the way you do things. It's going to have you do some stuff a little bit differently than you would if it was a rear reference axle. This is our work order information screen, right? You can match your paper work orders or your digital work orders that you guys use here. That is a changeable field. If you don't match it, it will count up automatically. Okay, so it'll just go from 1 to 2 to 3. Every alignment you do is going to be stored in here, guys. Every single one. So company name is mandatory. Anything that's dark, you have to fill out. Okay, so I'm making you guys put company name, unit number, odometer, and technician name because we want to know who to blame.
Here, I'll
Now you could put VIN if you want. You can put license plate if you want. That's completely up to you guys. If they decide they want that mandatory, we can make that mandatory too. It's all adjustable.
It's 530-214.
All right. Dodging the bullet. Training.
Yep.
All right, go ahead and hit OK. So now we've started our process here. We've got our work order created. This is an automotive database. So what Hunter does, they take an automobile aligner and they lay a truck aligner on the top of it. So yes, your next question is, hey, can I align my pickup truck with this? My answer to that is you could probably measure it, but you're probably not going to be able to get underneath there to do adjustments because, well, you know, fat guys don't fit. And you also have to understand that those sensors have to clear the floor. So the minimum tire diameter that you can measure with these is 28 inches. So if your tires are shorter than that, you can't put those sensors on it anyway. Okay, so they'll hit the floor, and that's a bad thing. 28 and taller, yes, you can. So like a pickup truck with 17s or 18s, you probably could measure it. And you could probably maybe make a toe adjustment, but it's tough to do on the floor. So answer that question without you having to ask it. The database has got it all in there, so it's all in there. Whatever pickup truck you got, whatever car you got, it's in there. But hit the space button. This is going to navigate us to the bottom of the database to where the heavy-duty vehicles lie. You can tell how important we are to Hunter. They put us at the end. Now, what are we working on? Well, we're working on a Kenworth. Well, you can also use the letter K to jump to Kenworth, or like if you have a Freightliner, you can hit F. It'll get you to the Fs. Now, all right. Now, here's where the alignment comes to a screeching halt. Because what we have to tell the computer is what axle is under the front of this truck. I don't care about the drives. I only care about the front, the steer axle. We need to know who makes it. We need to know what model number it is, because each axle has its own specification. And what we're trying to do is find the specification. So if somebody wants to get a flashlight and a creeper, let's take a peek at what's underneath this thing.
It's a Meritor.
Yeah, that's probably all you need to know. It's probably an MFS 12 or 13.
I know they're Meritor.
What year is the truck? 18, 19? Yeah, it's probably one of those 12. You guys run any of that? So the struggle you guys, while we're waiting, the struggle you guys are going to find is in turning the tie rod. That's going to be the hard part. Tips for turning an old tie rod is vibration. You take an air chisel with a flat bit on it, you vibrate the hell out of it. Lubrication. Get your howls or your pennant, you know, PB blast or whatever you guys use, lubricate it. And torque. Torque can be applied by a really strong guy, or you can use a floor jack to apply the torque, but you got to be careful, guys. You don't want to over pressure that tie rod in and break it. And you don't want to over pressure it and have it leave the parking lot and break. So just use your head. It takes a lot of force with a floor jack to stop and change the tie rod, or vibrate it somewhere. I mean, if you vibrate it carefully and properly, most of the time you can do it by hand. You know, you'll have a long pipe wrench, maybe have to put a little bit of an extension pipe on it, but you can usually get it to go by hand. Very rarely should you ever have to break out a floor jack. It's just, I had a customer that he's a floor jack kind of guy, and he beat the hell out of a tie rod and made it out the door, and he started to turn the back into the parking spot, and the tie rod fell off. So thank God it happened in the parking lot and not on the road, but we don't want to do that, right? We want to just use your heads. What you got? Yeah, it's usually a tag. Yeah, usually there's a tag or a stamp. It'll be right inside. It's probably an MFS 13. There'll be a bunch of numbers on it, more than likely. It's usually the first few. Yeah, like a 3" by 4" tag or something's on there.
I got drinking without doing the free.
So most of your fleet's the 680s? Yep. Little gooey down there, huh? Now, as you saw, how I said that the alignment comes to a screeching halt, right? Yes, you do have to know what you're doing. So, we'll talk about that too, because you're going to find out what it is and we're going to look at other options.
When we align trailers, we usually go based off the kingpin.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. So that's easier than this.
No. We're going to go off.
Oh, okay.
So we actually have a trailer that holds those front sensors. And that's what gives you that center line point and then measures your distances from So you'll still use sensors, but we're not going to, in this case, we're going to roll the truck forward. It's kind of hard to do it on a trailer that's sitting on the landing. So we're not going to roll, we do what's called jacking compensation. The challenge on a trailer is the pivot bolts. You got to turn those cams. It's got the breakaway bolt on the back side. You got to change the bolt first. Some guys cheat, but some guys will roll it up there, some guys will get creative. But, yeah. Proper way is to put a breakaway bolt back in there and break that bolt away when you're done setting them up. That's the correct. I'm not the alignment for this. You have no idea what some guys do. I got one shop that they use a 1-inch gun and they just put it on there, they get it loose, they make the adjustment, and they just keep hammering away until it tightens up.
Yeah, we change that hardware each and every time.
Absolutely. Honestly, trailer alignments you should do when it's pushing style, right? Because that makes the most sense. You're going to be breaking that bolt away anyway, changing the bolt. Yes, you can do it without changing the bushings, but you know what? Professional alignment with fresh bushings is going to be a lot longer lasting than an alignment on old bushings. So, some of my tanker companies, they have to do that because they got to clean out the tanker. It's like 4 hours of work to prepare it just for hot work. So at that point, we're changing it out. Just do all new bushings, boom, done. All right, you find it?
No, this one doesn't have the tag on the axle.
So this is what, 18 and 19? Should be another class. Does.
I can take those caps off.
Yeah, you probably should. And then I'll show you how to use the small one. Yeah, you already got the caps off. Let's take that bracket off, take the sensor off, and then take it off. Oh yeah, I'll set this up. The first time I use these is pain in the ass. You guys will like these again. Alright, guys, just plug that in there. Yeah, I'm going to use that. I'll put a rubber clamp. I think I like that better. Those other clamps are very dependent upon the tire to wheel fit.
Okay.
If you got a lot of bead protector on your tires, then you'll struggle getting these.
Yeah.
This drives these tight. Just setting them up to run right the first time. Pins and grooves to rotation right on these. And clamp that sucker, unclamp it, and pop it in there.
Okay, this.
Yeah, just like a can clamp. Slide it in and clamp it in. Now guys, you don't have to clamp these clamps all the way, those little black rubbers. Because you'll end up stretching out that little clamp and you'll end up they're like $30. Alright, now don't forget when you mount them, put them on, turn them on. We want to make sure that all the sensors are floating because we're going to push the truck. If we push the truck forward and that sensor hits the ground, it gets bent. Bad idea. About $1,800 to fix it. So you don't want to do that if you can avoid it. Now, we got all the sensors on the truck. We're going to be moving the truck as part of our alignment process. There's 3 steps to an alignment. There's compensation, there's measurement, and there's adjustment. The first part of compensation is when we're going to roll the truck forward. We're going to push it. So in order to push the truck forward, we don't want to go too far and have it roll out that front door. We don't want to go too short and not get a good measurement. So we have a way to adjust that to measure that compensation. wheel chock. It has a cable on it and a dumbbell. It's not a reference to you guys, but how we're going to set the rolling distance of this truck. Okay, this is how we do it. I'm going to plug it into the tire. Okay. Can you guys see that?
Thank you.
Plug that into the tire. We're going to put the dumbbell up against it. I'm going to pull it straight. I'm going to relax it so this is 90 degrees. So I got it boom, boom. And then we'll get rid of that. Get him out in front. That sets the distance we're going to push the truck. So we don't go too far and we don't go out the door. We stop the truck. We want to control that process. We don't want to break that. Now the next thing we're going to do is get our pusher in place for the back chop. So let's go over to the cart again. This right here, guys, is our truck pusher. You see where it's plugged in? Bottom corner is where the charge jack goes. Now, the batteries in these sensors are really long lasting when they're new. You'll get 8 hours of runtime out of these batteries. You'll be on pretty much the whole day. You do have spares. I'll show you how to change them when we're done with this alignment. They just slide right into the back of the tubes. There are 2 brass buttons you push, they slide right in. If somebody can get a Sharpie, we're going to want to mark all these batteries before we're done. That is your pusher. Charge is there. Held in place with a little clamp wheelio there. And then there's your pusher. This will push your truck, even a loaded tractor trailer. Amazingly, because it's just turn the tire. You have a safety button here. Push it in. Push down. All it does is turn the tire. It doesn't push the truck like Hercules. It just turns the tire. And it will easily roll this truck. But yeah, make sure you release the brake before you do it. And if you forget and it gets jammed up, you do have a back button back here. So you can back it out if you go too fast. Or if it gets wedged or something, you can back it out. It's only designed to push the truck 2 feet, right? So the idea of pushing the truck around the parking lot with this is a bad idea. You'll burn it out. So just understand, 2 feet at a time, just to do alignment. This is part of the alignment. This is part of the alignment, not a standalone tool. Okay. So we're going to put this behind the rear tire, and it'll be our back wheel tire. Go off, set this good. And that's it. That's my rear wheel chock. So now the truck is set. Sensors are on it. Middle ones are vertical. They're all turned on. Securely clamped so they don't slide off. Wheel chock's in place. Truck pusher's in place. Now we can go to the computer. Who wants to run the computer today? Who's going to do most of the alignments?
Probably me.
And you're running the computer. Just all good. Very little thought has to go into navigating the software, right? You got to use all your brain power for doing this. So what would you think would be your first step here? That makes complete sense, doesn't it? All right, so now this screen is our axle configuration screen. This sets up the process. That's all it does. The computer just needs to know what kind of truck you're working on. Is it a 2-axle truck, a 3-axle truck? Is it a semi-trailer? Is it got 3 steers, 2 steers? It needs to know that so it can set up the steps that we're going to take, okay? That's all this is, so don't freak out. If you happen to be working on a box truck, you're going to be up there, straight axle, right? Or if you got like a yard spot or something like that, you can do that too, right? That's going to be for potentially independent suspension front and rear. You'll probably never touch that shit. You can't get underneath it anyway. Even skinny guys like you can't get underneath that stuff. Fat guys like me forget about it. So there you go. I want you to understand what this means. See, it says last rear reference. What that means is that when we do an alignment, we put sensors on the truck. We make a 3-sided box around the truck. That's what we've just done. We're going to find the middle of that box, the center line, geometric center line, and we're going to align that axle to the middle of the box, this axle to the back axle, and this axle to the back axle. So we're referring to it, we're looking at it. So if that guy's not right, nothing else will be. Okay, you got to get him correct as our foundation to get the rest of the truck correct. So if you have a truck with a rear axle that steers or lifts, or a bus, if you ever, God forbid, have to do one of them, you can't use it as a reference. It's a movable axle. This implies a straight axle, whether it's a drive or a dummy. Yeah, some are insane. So here, why don't we do this? Why don't you guys step over? I'll trim this. That way you guys can kind of all gather behind. So the rear axle, right? It says we're working on that guy right now. We already said, is anticipating that we're going to work on that guy. You already see that this is at 0.8, which technically is inspected, right? It's at the edge, it's bouncing in and out. It's probably like 0.8.5. 0.8 is the maximum spec. So on a rear axle, we want them perpendicular to the center line. It's just straight, 0 degrees. So there really isn't a spec at 0, right? We want it 0. Sitting at about 0.08. Push to the right, about 0.08. I want you to look at the middle axle now. It's at 19, 18, 19. If you add this 19 to that 0.8, what do you get? What's 19 plus 8? 27. That's what this axle really is. Remember, when we do an alignment the way Hunter does it, we found the center line of the truck, we're looking at this axle as a reference, and this guy is looking at this guy right now. So this guy's at 0.08 to the right, this guy is at 0.19 to this guy. So if we make this 0, then that ends up being 0.27. Okay? Now, if this was negative 0.8, then that would be positive 11. So add the two together, and it can be a negative number. Negative means to the left, positive means to the right. Okay? So just understand that if you guys, you're probably never going to do retail alignments, but to get an idea as to what kind of work you need to do on the truck, we already know what we have to do. We're going to have to adjust this guy because I don't like that number. It's too close to the end. And that's definitely way off. We got to tweak that guy again. And guess what? Tie rod's right on the money. So far, it's perfect. You don't have to tweak nothing. So now, we've done most of our measurement. One more thing we need to measure, and that's that caster angle. Remember the kingpin angle. We can't measure that directly, so we measure that with the camber chain. We're going to be steering the truck. So again, you get to do this. Hit measure caster. You're going to get in the truck, and you're going to steer to straight ahead. So you guys have to make sure you don't block the sensors. Steer to green, so from left to right in this case. Hold still and wait for the screen to change. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. You see it okay over there? I can move it over if you need to. Got it? Yeah, so just steer from left to the right a little bit. Up and hold still. Good. Very sensitive. Come back a little bit. It's telling you don't put the brakes on. You know, if the vehicle is raised, you lower the vehicle. You know, good. Unlock the sensors. All right, just hold still. It'll take a second. It'll take a measurement, and then it'll change. Come on. There we go. Now you're going to steer to the left, and you're going to steer about 10 degrees the first one and about 12 degrees the second. You can go a little faster than that. You don't want to jerk the wheel and go super fast and you'll flap the sensor and give you an error. Okay? You can go faster than that. Go ahead and turn. Don't start the truck. Keep going. Keep going. So these turn plates allow you to do this. You couldn't do this on the floor. Right? You go a little. So you're going to take the X and turn to an arrow and make it green. Keep going a little more. Obviously, you want to make sure there's no obstructions. Block this, no garbage cans or something so that you're going to bang into it. There you go, almost green, almost, and as soon as it turns green, hold still. There you go, hold still. And now continue turning a little more to the left. There you go, hold still. Now you're going to do the same thing, but going to the right. So we take two snapshots, because what we're actually measuring is that the wheel camber, as you turn it, it tips. You ever seen like a BMW when they steer the wheels all the way? They're really lazy to go. They use a lot of casting. Trucks use 4 to 6 degrees of casting. They don't lean that much. We're measuring that lean as we rotate it through a circle. All right, hold still. And a little more. And you don't have to be dead center on this, guys. Just yeah, I mean, so now you're going to go straight ahead again. This is going to be very sensitive. Get it green and just come out of the truck because it might move a little bit if you get in and out of the truck. And that long toe beam is because they were looking off to the side. That'll correct itself. Oh, really sensitive at this point. This will accurize all of our numbers. All the numbers that we had on the screen earlier may change by 100 or 2 because we're about to level all these things and give it a perfectly level 20 to work on. All right, there you go. Jump on out. Now you notice it's showing you the block to hit the brakes. We use wheel chocks. That's the old car days. I mean, that's a 1990 Chevy Lumina steering wheel, okay, with max strut suspension on there. Yeah, I wish I could update the graphics. This is really a little embarrassing.
You should never.
So now, just bump the tire. Bump that front edge of the tire to steer a little bit. There you go. See? See? Oh, it bounced back. Pump it again. There you go. Again. You're gonna get a little fight back on this. These plates don't have. We have another style of trim that has a lot less friction on them, so that steers a little easier. So you got to get it green, right? Now we're going to level and lock all the sensors. This is how we do that, guys. You got a bubble level on each sensor. This is your locking knob. Now, that's why I said you have to unlock them, because if we push forward and it's rigid, you're going to bend it. I'm going to level it out. I like to put a little friction here, just a little bit, just fingertip. I'll level it, and then I'll snug it back up. Not too much on there, because I don't want to bend that. It's a brass screw. Very easy to strip out, okay? So it's literally just finger torque. Let's do all 6. Lift those cars in the air, and you don't want them rolling off the end of the it's a dog. You should be wheel chocking, but some cars have independent rear suspension, so you can't wheel chock them when you adjust them, right? So they got to leave them free, so they put the brake on, and just the tire patch is locked in place. We're not rolling, so we're good. All right. So you guys might see error messages like long and toe being blocked. That means that somebody's probably standing here. These are optical sensors. They look at each other. They look at each other with infrared light. So this front sensor is looking at both those sensors back there. And if you notice, the middle one is higher than the rear one. That's why that bracket has to be vertical when we start. If you get an error message that says something like long toe being blocked, it could be because somebody didn't put that middle sensor on correctly. Okay? Just pay attention. That's another very common error. They put the sensor on incorrectly, and then they get that block beam, and they can't do anything. It happens a lot, like too much. So, bump that tire again. Give it a bump. There you go. Ooh, she is fighting you today. She doesn't like you. All right, that's okay. She's stabilizing. All right, so steer the wheels as directed, meaning get it green. Level and lock the sensors. Come on and get ready. All right, it's calculating your caster. There you go. All right, so you got 3.5 degrees on the left-hand side, so that keeps him leaning backwards 3.5 degrees. The right-hand side is 3.7 degrees. The difference between the two of them is nice. It's pretty small. We like that to move. Looking good. Notice our toe number went up a little bit. It was at 09. Well, we've accurized everything now because we leveled out all the sensors, and it's at 12, which is a little on the high side. Your camber, it's telling us what the camber is, but it's not telling us if it's red or green, okay? Camber's a little bit high on the left-hand side. That could be the floor, right? This truck could be leaning that way because the floor might be driving like that. And I would say it probably is a little bit of a lean to that side. So just based on the right side, right sides, we're going to be close to each other. But it's still not a bad number. Anything over about 0.7, I worry a little bit. I want to check wheel bearings. Guys, before we finish today, you're going to all email me your email or text me your email. I'm going to send you a lot of the information I'm going to cover here about diagnostics. I'm going to send you a PDF that explains all this stuff so you can refer to it later, because you're not going to remember everything I tell you today, and I don't expect you to. The goal today is to give you some of this theory, some of the diagnostics, get you used to using this machine and doing alignments and you learn as you go, but you'll have this to refer to as you go forward, okay? Yeah, I'll send that to everyone.
For the
All right.
Packard, what's the limit of being in between the numbers?
Okay, so our spec, I believe it was 4, was our center spec. It was plus or minus 1.5. So you can be as low as 2.5 and as much as 5.5, right? So there's always a plus or a minus on a spec. And sometimes there's very little on the minus and a lot on the plus. It really depends on the spec. The Volvos have a weird spec. Their toe is 09, but it's minus 2, 02, and plus like 3. So it's like they want to stay closer to the 09 and not much below it. Just all my customers are like, oh, I show that. It's because they want it at 09. They don't want it anywhere else. So they don't give you a lot of downside room. So again, zero running toe. They know that tire. My opinion is 09 is a good number for an older truck. A truck that's got a tie rod that's got some time on it. 06 is the best number. So if you get a brand new truck, set it to 06, because that tie rod's nice and tight, right? As time goes on, tie rods will wear. It doesn't mean you have to replace them. They've worn. Every tie rod, the minute you drive the truck, it starts to wear. It doesn't mean it's worn to the point of replacement, okay? So older trucks, 09, brand new truck, 06, oh, they'll love the tire wear, because that's the best number for that. You ever hear of Hirschbach? Big freight company. Yeah, they've been doing. They're a really, really highly efficient company. They push fuel economy like there's no tomorrow. And part of that was from a study we did. We did like 250 million mile study or some shit. Crazy. All right, so we've done 2 parts of the alignment already. We've done compensation. That's rolling the truck forward. It's measuring all that wobble in the mounting of our sensors and the wheels. And we've done our final measurements with Casper. So we have to tell the computer we're done measuring. Time to move on to adjustments. So you have to save before measurements. Do not get copy and adjust anything from this screen. You will regret it. Okay, now it's telling you what about steering wheel level stats. The bad thing about trucks is we only have one tire, so we can't really level the steering wheel. I mean, we can move the steering wheel, but we can't really do like on a car. The steering wheel's crooked and your tires are straight. You can tighten up this tire rod, loosen up this one, and rotate the steering wheel straight. You can't do that in a truck. Unless you guys have some of the Freightliners with independent rack and pinion steering. You don't want to.
Can we just pull the steering wheel off and align it that way?
Sometimes, yeah, you have to be conscious though. If this truck has a steering wheel sensor, you guys look like you might have a radar system on the front of these things. You gotta make sure you're not repositioning that steering wheel sensor. So most of the time, if the truck is in good condition and we get toe, thrust, and strut correct, then that all kind of runs it out. It may be a little bit off. It's not going to be one of these deals where it's a quarter turn. Volvo's guys will pull the shaft out of the gearbox because it's got a lot of little teeth and spline on it and no master spline. It's up to you guys how you want to attack it. Okay? It's not, in my opinion, we're worried about the tires going in. All right, so we're not even going to bother with this. I always just say none. It defaults to none because it knows it's a truck and there's not much we can do. The reason why they have this in here is to help diagnose the problem like on a car, and the cars have different adjustments that are available to them to center that steering wheel. We don't have that here, so we just say ready. All right, this is what it's telling us to do. It's telling us to move the right side of the truck forward by 1/16 of an inch. Now, this is where we have to use our brains. I'm looking at you back there. How's your brain today? We need to move the right side of the truck forward a 16th of an inch. If we cannot do that, what do we do then? If we can't move it forward for whatever reason, what do we do? Move the right side back. Bingo. So let's look at the right side of the truck and see what's going on there. The problem that we have here is we had lazy guys in the past. Normally, one exception, there's only one truck I know on the market that requires shims to stay on both sides of the truck, and that's a low air Z-Leaf Peterbilt. You should only have shims on one side of the axle. We got shims on both sides of this axle. It means he got lazy. They did whatever that computer told them to do. They said, oh, add a shim. They added a shim. They didn't look at the other side of the truck. The idea is that for every shim that's on this side, if you have one that's the same on this side, all you're doing is moving your axle backwards a little bit. Why? We're trying to adjust the angle of the axle. We don't care about the wheelbase. You know, we change the wheelbase by 16 minutes. It doesn't make any sense. For today's purposes, I'll leave this up to you guys, whoever's in charge here. Ideally, what we should do is remove all the shims back here, tighten everything back up, and see what number we get. That's the proper way to do this. Okay? I'll leave it up to who's in charge. So
we'll just pull them all out.
That's what I would recommend. Pull them all out, we'll remeasure that, and then see what it says to do. Because that's the right, honestly, that's the right way to do it. Because we should only have, technically there should be shims on only one side of the axle. Now, you could have shims on this axle here, and shims on that axle over there, and that's okay. Just on the same axle, only on one side of the truck. If you need it, you may not even need shims. So let's get some tools. Let's pull these shims. Now, this design is such that you can only take one bolt out at a time on these, because your weight is on that spring eye. So you're going to loosen up both bolts. You're going to slide one out, swing your shims out of the way, put the bolt back in, pull this bolt out, take the shims out, put the bolt back in. Be careful. This particular design will crash down on you and really hurt you if you don't pay attention to what we're doing. You couldn't pull the bolt out anyway, but there's guys that will beat it with a hammer and then wonder why it's tight. I can't get the bolt out. Dude, the truck's on the bolt. You're not going to get the bolt out.
Because you want your back axle tilted to the right, front axle or left, and then your front axle to the right.
Okay,
right?
so you do not.
Okay.
You're expressing old school thought. Okay. The reason why so he asked a question. It's a very good question. He asked it, hey, don't you want like the rear axle here pointed off to the left, and then the center axle pointed off to the right? So effectively, we're making it like a V or a cone. The idea behind that is that they cancel each other. They do not cancel. What you do when you have angles like this is you create a new thrust line for that axle. We call this where they're beat out tandem scrub. We call this, they're like pointing the same direction, tandem thrust. Tandem thrust really doesn't wear tires that badly, but it does push the truck, and then that makes him respond, and that's how he wears tires. Tandem scrub will steer the truck. It will actually try and make the truck go around the corner. I've seen trucks bad enough where if you went out in this parking lot and let go of the wheel, it just had a big circle.
Right now, they got him placed for Joliet.
Yes, it's stores.
I mean, his area got any kind of bigger because I guess they're short of the Chicago area.
So we're literally gonna do this again, so it's gonna take a bunch of time. All right, I'll pause it then.
Pretty repetition. We're gonna end up probably doing it again because right now all we're doing is removing the shims.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna go check our numbers again.
Yeah, right. And then put the shims in. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I get it. All right. I'll just make.
We're going to relevel see what happens. Somebody clears out.
How often do you have to redo an axle after you?
It happens on occasion because what we're looking at here, this is the spring spread, and the center of the spring, that can be different on each truck. I don't know why we're getting a crazy number like that. Okay, that's good. Look at that. All right, since we're seeing this goofy number, this, guys, come around here and take a look at this. This is your Wi-Fi pod.
Yeah.
This resets the routing. These are all Wi-Fi. Essentially, our little network. And sometimes you get glitches like that, and you just unplug it here. It's like a phone cord. You squeeze the tab and pull it out. And this will reboot this, and hopefully we get better numbers. So that's crazy why we see a good number. Something's not right, guys. We got something blocking or something terrible is blocking. So let's go around and shut off and turn on each side. Something glitched for sure.
So yeah, need an entire reboot of everything. Huh?
Yeah, we may have to start over, which is going to suck.
Yeah.
This one's not level. Yeah, you level it out. That's not going to make that much difference. Not like that. That's tremendous. But something glitched.
It timed out. It's taking forever.
Well, they do. They absolutely can time out.
I
It's,
figured.
they kind of like go dumb. I guess
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Turn it on. There you go. Let's see what happens. Because the sensors don't see activity for a while.
It was just flashing.
Yeah, there we go.
Just letting you know. Yeah.
That's what it was, guys. Yeah. So they do kind of go dumb, like blind. Now we got what we expect to see.
That tells you since though.
Yeah. Y'all took too long.
So yeah, they kind of like timed out. Basically, is what he said. It's like they kind of lose their vision. They go dumb. It's like staring at something for a long time. It goes dumb to it. But that's the number I would have expected to see. Now it's almost impossible to get a shim truck perfect, because if we were to put another 32nd in there, we just go to the other side, right? So if I see 03 or less, I'm happy. 03 or less on a shim style truck, I'm very happy with that. And we'll talk about why it's 03 or less that I'm happy with when we get to the end. So we went from 09 to 01. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Let's hit okay. This is going to be the summary of that axle. Okay. This is giving us all the numbers that are not necessarily have a spec form, but they're important numbers to have. They're diagnostic numbers. They're gray because there's no spec. But in an ideal world, perfect world, every number on this screen would be 0 because you have a straight axle. You shouldn't have any camber. I can tell you right now that your bay is leaning, right? So back there at the back of the truck, that bay is leaning like this. Okay? You'll find out a lot of your trucks are going to have very similar numbers there. Okay, you're going to see, negative 0.6, negative 0.7. That's the bay leaning.
It's like a 50-year-old building.
Yeah, no force. But Hunter tried to make a perfect pad of concrete. It didn't work out. He spent a crazy amount of money on it, and 3 weeks after it was poured, it wasn't level. The sun heats it up. Yeah. So total tow of 0.14, 0.15. That's not bad. Up to 0.18, I don't even worry about it. Anything over 0.18, take a close look at it, especially the individual tow. Because if you see one side, so what we're talking about here is this back axle having them towed in a little bit. Negative would be towed out. So if you see a lot of toe in on one side and it's perfectly straight on the other, it usually means he backed into something and clobbered it. And you got a bent axle. So just watch this number. This number's really big. Double check these numbers. As long as this number is close to 0, you can kind of diagnose what happened. It happens a lot. You see it a lot. They're backing the truck up. They're not paying attention to hit like a concrete, light pole or something like that, and oops, there you go. But these numbers all look pretty decent. We're within what I would consider to be a normal range on all the numbers. We know that that's your floor because one side is leaning that way and that side is leaning that way. Next step, adjust the scrub. Remember what we predicted at the beginning? It's going to be like negative 27 or something? Negative 26. So what's it saying to do? 3/16 forward on the right-hand side. So see what we got. So I'm not going to say anything. Someone's got to tell me what we got to do. Let's go look at that right-hand side. Let's see what we got.
Now we got shims on it too.
So somebody's got shims on both sides of the truck. So we should repeat what we just did. That's going to probably be, I might have to do that. I don't know if we got APU there. You challenge with an APU. The other side would be pretty easy. All right, let's rock it out. Do it.
So if you have the same amount of shims on each side, can we leave in what we think it should be, or just go back to the...
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that we're equal, right?
Yeah.
And what's a 3/16 adjustment? So we got to figure out what we have here. Technically, you could probably just take out. Well, I think, hold on. I got to knock it backwards here.
Yeah, it wants to go forward.
It wants to go forward. We could probably just take out this side all and see what it does for us. So we start over here. That looks like that might be an 1/8 of an inch. Hard to tell. Yeah, there might be the 1/32, and we'll have to fix more back in. Or more back in over there. This one you can't. He had replaced all 4 hanger bolts that we had tried to loosen. He broke all of them. And I said, well, we never even got to the steer axle. Never even got to it.
When you guys get a new guy, if he doesn't watch all that I'm recording, you're an idiot. Just letting you know.
What happened?
I'm just saying, when you get a new guy, make sure he watches everything I'm recording or you're fucked.
Okay, let's re-level
I
our
don't think we're gonna put a new guy in alignments right off the bat.
Well, that's what I'm saying, you know. Make sure he knows his shit. Because it does not look like fun.
We're going to re-level. We'll get some fun anyways. See what happens. Somebody clears out.
How often do you have to redo an axle after you...
It happens on occasion because what we're looking at here, this is the spring spread, and the center of the spring, that can be different on each truck. I don't know why we're getting a crazy number like that. Okay, that's good. All right, since we're seeing this goofy number, this, guys, come around here and take a look at this. This is your Wi-Fi pod.
Yeah.
This resets the routing. These are all Wi-Fi. Essentially, rather older network. And sometimes you get glitches like that, and you just unplug it here. It's like a phone cord. You squeeze the tab and pull it out. And this will reboot this, and hopefully we get better numbers. So that's crazy why we see those numbers. Something's not right. Like, we got something blocking or something terrible is blocking. Man. So let's go around and shut off and turn on each side so we can do something. Something's glitched for sure.
So yeah, need an entire reboot of everything. Huh?
Yeah, we may have to start over, which is going to suck.
Yeah.
This one's not level. Yeah, you level it out. That's not going to make that much difference. Not like that. That's tremendous. But something's glitched.
It timed out. It's taking forever.
Well, they do. They absolutely can time out.
I
It's,
figured.
they kind of like go dumb. I
Yeah.
guess the best way to say it. Turn it on. There you go. Let's see what happens. Because the sensors don't see activity for a while.
It was just flashing.
Yeah, there we go.
Just letting you know. Yeah.
That's what it was, guys. Yeah, so they do kind of go dumb, like blind. Now we got what we expect to see.
That tells you it's installed.
Yeah. Y'all took too long.
So yeah, they kind of like timed out. Basically, is what he said. It's like they kind of lose their vision. They go dumb. It's like staring at something for a long time. It goes dumb to it. But that's the number I would have expected to see. Now it's almost impossible to get a shim truck perfect, because if we were to put another 32nd in there, we just go to the other side, right? So if I see 03 or less, I'm happy. 03 or less on a shim style truck, I'm very happy with that. And we'll talk about why it's 03 or less that I'm happy with when we get to the end. So we went from 09 to 01. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Let's hit okay. This is going to be the summary of that axle. This is giving us all the numbers that are not necessarily have a spec form, but they're important numbers to have. They're diagnostic numbers. They're gray because there's no spec. But in an ideal world, perfect world, every number on this screen would be 0 because you have a straight axle. You shouldn't have any camber. I can tell you right now that your bay is leaning, right? So back there at the back of the truck, that bay is leaning like this. Okay? You'll find out a lot of your trucks are going to have very similar numbers there. Okay, you're going to see, it's negative 0.6, negative 0.7. That's the bay leaning.
It's like a 50-year-old building.
Yeah, no force. But Hunter tried to make a perfect pad of concrete. It didn't work out. He spent a crazy amount of money on it, and 3 weeks after it was poured, it wasn't level. The sun heats it up. Yeah. So total toe of 0.14, 0.15. That's not bad. Up to 0.18, I don't even worry about it. Anything over 0.18, take a close look at it, especially the individual toe. Because if you see one side, so what we're talking about here is this back axle having them towed in a little bit. Negative would be towed out. So if you see a lot of toe in on one side and it's perfectly straight on the other, it usually means you backed into something and clobbered it. And you got a bent axle. So just watch this number. This number's really big. Double check these numbers. As long as this number is close to 0, you can kind of diagnose what happened. It happens a lot. You see it a lot. They're backing the truck up. They're not paying attention to hit like a concrete, light pole or something like that, and oops, there you go. But these numbers all look pretty decent. We're within what I would consider to be a normal range on all the numbers. We know that that's your floor because one side is leaning that way and that side is leaning that way. Next step, adjust the scrub. Remember what we predicted at the beginning? It's going to be like negative 27 or something? Negative 26. So what's it saying to do? 3/16 forward on the right-hand side. So see what we got. So I'm not going to say anything. Someone's got to tell me what we got to do. Let's go look at that right-hand side. Let's see what we got.
Now we got them on it too.
So somebody's got kids on both sides of the truck. So we should repeat what we just did. That's going to probably be, I might have to do that. I don't know if we got APU there. You challenge with an APU. The other side would be pretty easy. Alright, let's rock it out. Do it.
So if you have the same amount of shims on each side, can we leave in what we think it should be, or just go back to the...
Yeah, absolutely. So we know we're equal, right?
Yeah.
And what's a 3/16 adjustment? So we got to figure out what we have here. Technically, you could probably just take out. Well, I think, hold on. I got to knock it backwards here.
Yeah, it wants to go forward.
Once go forward, we could probably just take out this side all and see what it does for us. So we start over here. That looks like that might be an 1/8 of it. Hard to tell. Yeah, there might be 3 1/32, and we'll have to put some more back in. Or more back in over there. This one you can't. somebody did exactly that. Some people say, oh, you only do it just a little tiny bit. No, we don't. No, we do straight up. We want to go perpendicular to the center line. Because alignment, as precise as that machine is still a game of averages, guys. If you think about it, if this is your rear axle, and you align it perfectly in the center, when it drives down the road, it's bouncing up and down, it's moving forward and backward because we have rubber bushings, big honking rubber bushes with a lot of movement in it. If we align it over here, it's swinging in and out of alignment all the time. If we align it here, it stays in alignment on average longer. So it's really a game of averages, right? If you set it up crooked to begin with, it's going to always want to go crooked. So you're always going to be out of alignment. So set it up straight. The road's going to move it around anyway, but the idea is we get it as straight as we can while it's here.
How important is axle center? Like we do a ton of torque rods.
Yeah.
And,
So
I mean, sometimes we check axle center. Sometimes the guy's got to go now, and we throw it in.
yeah, I mean, generally speaking, axle center is important. It's not necessarily going to cause a pull or a drift,
Right.
but what it can do is it causes instability because the way the truck responds to bumps. Right, because if this guy's poked out too far, he's going to hit the road bumps differently than the one
Right.
in front.
Yeah. Not everything's in line.
Yeah, so that can make a little goofiness there. It's not necessarily going to cause a pull or a drift, but yes, axle straight.
I mean, we always try to do it. And
Yeah,
we usually try to keep it within,
rule is
as close as you can.
quarter inch.
But
The rule is a
yeah,
quarter
we always
inch.
try to
Yeah.
need. So
Yeah, if you can go to an 1/8, you guys are doing fine, absolutely fine. The general rule of thumb is a quarter of an inch side, difference side to
right
side.
from your.
As you know.
These are wrong ones.
They probably are. Yeah, these are 4-inch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 6-inch ones are the bigger ones.
So did we save those ones that?
Well, we're gonna have a stack anyway because we're pulling them all out of this pack. So you don't have to kill yourself to get them right.
Just, but I know for future, is it going to be this style? This one then?
It's gonna be.
Because this top one is the one that I got. The tandem axle.
Yeah, this is the 4-inch ones. These are the ones you want, right?
Okay.
So open inside the 4-3/8, 4-3/8. No. You're gonna want.
That maybe he doesn't have them then. Those were the only two that said they were for Kenworth.
Oh, center to center 5. There's your centers. Yeah, it's gonna be these guys.
Gotcha.
The lower. Yeah, this is a lower. Okay. That's gonna be. Those are gonna be the ones because they got the 5 3/4 inch center to center.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Yeah, that's you won't probably see those anymore. Those
small ones?
You might see them on some Peterbilts. I've seen a few of them, the smaller ones.
All right.
The rear fleet's gonna be most of these.
Richard will send me some kind of email, so if you want to reach out to him sometime, so we have time to get.
Sure.
Probably wants to strip the floor or something.
So guys, so far while we're waiting, any questions so far? You're asking some very good questions. Anything you've seen that you don't understand?
If we're gonna do papers on one side, is there a preferred side to do it? Kind
No.
of like on trailer, the driver's side.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. 90% of the time, driver's side's the only way to adjust the trailer, right? There are some trailers with cams on both sides, which is pretty rare. Tank which is rare. So you're forced to make the adjustment on the left side. So if the computer says move the right side forward by a 16, you just do the opposite on the left hand side. You move it backwards by a 16. And with a trailer, it's kind of nice because you can rotate the cam, you can watch it change, the number will change, and you'll be like, oh, and go a little too far, you go back. It's not like here we've got to process them, we've got to loosen bolts, we've got to remove shims, we've got to put them, it takes time, right? You want to make sure you do that in the right, so you don't have to do it 100 times. On the trailer, it's going to be a back and forth thing no matter what. So. But yeah, since you do that, it always references the right side because it has to. Because trucks can be adjusted on either side. So we need to reference one and let you figure out what to do.
How important is it?
Battery dead?
Alright, so you're going to see a video of them pushing the tractor-trailer combo. Right? The trailer is connected to the tractor. They put the front sensors on the rear axle. They put the middle and rear sensors on the axle of the trailer. They roll the whole assembly. Okay. Here's why I don't agree with that. I recommend that we always reference the kingpin of the trailer, because that's the center line of the trailer. We have a kingpin gauge. You guys should have one. I think it's a long ass bar, like a T-bar.
Yeah.
That clicks to the kingpin, and then the front sensors go on that, and it gives us our center line. And then we have to jack up each wheel to compensate the sensor, because the sensors are never perfect. Right? That's when we roll the truck. That's compensation. On a trailer, we're going to jack it up to what we call 3-point compensation. The reason I don't agree with Hunter's video showing that is because I don't think it's accurate. Because it's assuming that this front sensor, and that's the center line of the truck, right? The middle, the virtual middle here. And we're going to align them. Let's say that if the truck comes in and the trailer's this way, because they're not place. So this center, the kingpin is in front of the rear axles. It's not at the rear axle. So it's shifting your center line over by whatever amount. We don't know what it is. We don't know. It could be as little as a 1/16 of an inch. It could be an inch. If it's an inch, that's a big number back here. If you take that center line that's 40 some odd feet away and you move it an inch, it's going to change your angle a lot back here.
Yeah, it grows.
So I don't like that philosophy. I've been yelled at by people because they're like, you sell it that way. That's not, no, I don't sell it that way. I sell it this way because I don't, there are people that do that. And again, I used to think, hey, if they're connected, I want to keep them together. But just do it with the kingpin bar. The trailer will be right. If the truck is right and the trailer is right, guess what? The whole thing's probably pretty damn good. So just do them separate. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. They really push that under, and it's just ugly. What do you think about a car carrier? Car carrier wheels down here.
It's not really a fixed
This one is right? Yeah, you slide this back and forth, you know. You position your fifth wheel. Yeah, you don't know where the center line really is. So a few things about heat, guys. Heat can be your friend, can be your enemy. Right, yeah. Yeah, Mac went to alphanumeric descriptions of their stuff. And unfortunately, I don't have a conversion chart handy. I know we have it hidden on our website somewhere. All right, Greg.
Positive numbers.
Yeah. Probably not going to make much
Well, I
difference.
guess the camera. They didn't say you
Right, but we talked
sent it like a camera versus
Okay, so what are we seeing now, right? We saw our summary screen. The axle looked good. What was the total toe?
Camber is the tilt of the wheels like
Yeah, top to bottom. So
can't adjust.
top of the tire toward the truck is negative camber, meaning like this. Top of the tire away from the truck is positive.
If that number was off, that indicates some wear.
So what do you guys see for that summary of the axle? What do we see on that center axle? Or the summary screen? Summary.
Everything is green.
All right, so let me show you something. See that the sidebar? Yeah. The sidebar will allow you to manipulate the way the software. You can go backwards. All right. Okay. Just don't get in the habit of jumping around.
Yeah.
Right. Simply because you want to follow the guided process whenever possible. Okay. If you start getting crazy over here, you could lose your steps. You don't want to do that. So yeah, see the front goes through. It's even better than the back axle. And your camber, yeah, it's actually pretty level at that spot of the floor. So
What button did you press to go back on to make sure?
I use
on here.
the sidebar, and I went. We were here. I went to there.
Okay.
So just went back one step. So yeah, the summary is really good. That looks nice. And then go ahead and hit your adjust camber caster. So can we adjust camber on a truck? Camber, top of the tire leaning to the body or away from the body. You can't adjust camber on a truck because it's a fixed axle, right? It's not independent suspension. So there's no way to adjust camber. Some people bend axles still to this day, which is a no-no, because that axle is, guarantee you, I know the people that engineered that thing, and they say...
You mean like intentionally bend it?
Intentionally bend it. So if it's, let's say the truck had positive camber. Here's your axle, and it's got the, the kick up to it. the drop off, whatever you want to call it. And let's say the camber was like this, and they wanted that tire to be more straight up and down. They come in here with a fixture that would bend the axle like that and bring it straight up. And it works in the bay, right? You can get the truck back in spec in the bay, and maybe even correct the driving condition. But what ends up happening is you fatigue the axle, and then it goes back to where it was, and possibly further, and possibly catastrophically further.
It's like taking a paperclip and bending it, you know?
Eventually it's going to break. So not a single axle manufacturer on the planet today recommends bending their axles. So it's right in the factory installation and service manuals, do not bend. But there are companies that sell bending equipment for that. And there are some shops that still practice that at their own risk, right? My philosophy is if the axle's damaged to the point where the camber is out of spec, maybe you need an axle. Maybe it's time to change the axle up. Instead of you're saving the guy a couple of grand on an axle, but you might kill him. So,
yeah,
right?
A family.
Or a family in the minivan,
you know?
exactly. Yes. All right, so these numbers are just our generic screen here. We're not going to have to adjust the caster because we're really nicely in spec on this truck. This is our individual toe. We're not adjusting individual toe on this truck. We're adjusting the total toe, okay? I have this button here for a reason. If you ever have to change the caster wedges on that front axle to tip the axle backwards, so you have the spring, you have the axle, that wedge goes in there to tip the axle backwards. So if you ever have to change that, then you need to re-verify the caster by doing that steering mechanism again. That's what they call that, a caster sweep. So that's built into the program so you don't skip that step if you do make the adjustment. But go ahead and click it. Now what's it say on this? It's going to give you that thing again, but you can also, we didn't change it, so do we need to measure it again? Nope, so bypass. Now you can use the K buttons here too. K1, 2, 3, and 4 correspond to K1, 2, 3, and 4 here. I'm a K button guy because I was using Hunter alignment machines in the 80s, so we didn't have this.
Yeah.
Okay, just so you know, that's how long ago it was. In any case, so now we're at a very important number that is gray because there's no spec. Should be 0. Perfect world is 0. The question is, what is setback? Setback is the front axle turn. Okay, what I mean by that is this. This is your front axle. Here's your tires. The axle's turned. Meaning that it's not, tires are still going straight, the axle's shifted backwards and forwards. Right? That's called setback. The axle's set back from a perpendicular position. Negative is to the left, positive is to the right.
That is because of the lean on the floor.
It can change that just a touch because it kind of torques a little bit, but really it's just normal wear and tear. Right?
Spring pins.
Spring pins can get worn. If the U-bolt's loosen up, the spring pin, centering pin wears, it'll shift it a little bit. Spring eye bushings get worn, cause the spring to shift. In other words, this is something that normally you don't adjust, right? We're not really adjusting it. It's a diagnostic number. It's gray. There's no spec, and it's diagnostic. Negative 15 is not bad. So from 0.00, and again, I don't care if it's negative or positive, to 0.25, that's good. That's pretty good. That's a normal range.
It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive as long as it's the same for each side, right?
Well, remember, this is just one axle. We're just measuring it. So it's going to be left or right. So negative is to the left. It's just our way of indicating that it's to the left, right? So negatives to the left, positives to the right. 0 to 25. I'm going to call it 25, but it's 0.25, okay? 0 to 25, you're good. Don't even worry about it. It's normal. I consider it decent. 25 to 50, 0.25, negative or positive, 0.50, negative or positive. Then you want to really inspect the truck carefully. You want to get deeper into that, hit your U-bolts, look for sliding marks on the springs, something that might indicate that that axle's been wiggling around a little bit. And if it's over 0.5, it can cause a pull. And it'll pull in the direction it's pointing. So if it's negative 0.52, it might pull to the left. If it's positive 0.52, it might pull to the right. May not, but it can cause a pull. So everything on the truck could be green. Rear axle, middle axle, front axle, caster, camber, all green, and the truck pulls. That's why that number's there. Just so that if you ever have that condition, you're like, hey, this guy says it's still pulling, and it shouldn't because everything's perfect. That number's there. So most people ignore that number. Just it's just a step in the process that helps you diagnose what may or may not be happening with the truck. Okay? So we're not going to adjust it because it's good for one thing. Really, you don't normally adjust it anyway. So what's your next step?
Still pull if it's not, if it's say 0 to 25, like you said?
You should, yeah. It's not enough. So what you're actually talking about is, if you visualize this, every tire, the front tires on the truck, when you have a caster and it tips the spring, the kingpin's back, your thrust line, where the actual force of the road is in front of the tire. That's what makes the tire want to go straight, because it's trying to push against each other. When you shift it with the axle, it's the same thing as having too much casting. Okay. So it's like the thrust line on this side is behind this side, so it wants to steer the truck that way. It's like trying to drag it to that side. So again, this will be in the email too for you guys to verify that and refer to it. But setback is important. It's a diagnostic thing. All right, now this is our toe adjustment screen. And there's two numbers on the screen. The top one is your tie rod. That's actually what will change as you turn your tie rod. But the bottom one will also change. Bottom one is steer ahead. Basically, it's if the truck is driving straight. And I want you guys to understand, it's very important when you're adjusting the tie rod to keep this guy really close to 0. I like preferably -0.1, 0 or +0.1 before I tighten my clamps. So if I'm going to loosen my clamps, I'm going to start tweaking my tie rod. With the process is you start turning your tie rod, you get closer to your target number, you stop when you're within a few hundredths, then you steer the truck straight from underneath using this as a guide. So this comes onto the truck with you, and you have your toe number. That's your tie rod. It says total toe, tie rod is that way. You have your steer ahead number, which is there. So when you're under the truck, turning tie rod, getting we're at 25, down, I'm at 10, stop. Kick the tire, thump it with your pipe wrench, whatever. Get this really close to 0, then check this number. This number's still where you want it, tighten your clamps. Okay? You have to do steer ahead first. Guys, the way this sets on there's your power button right there. All right? And then there's 2 pads that just cradle into this thing, charge it. Make sure you leave that charge. That's like a gel cell battery. They don't like to be deep discharged. Same thing with the truck pusher. They don't like to be run flat. They like to be kind of kept even keel. These other batteries, it doesn't matter. You could run them all, but they could be dead. They could go dead while we're standing here. One more. Change the battery out and we're good to go. So steer ahead's important because of a phenomenon called toe out on turns. Toots. When you're driving a car or a truck, any vehicle with 2 front tires, when you steer, the inside tire has to turn more than the outside tire because it's a smaller circle. You know, it's 8-foot different circle size. So this guy's got to turn more. If you adjust the tie rod out here and get it perfectly straight, when you go straight, steering straight, now you're towed in too much. It's a very common thing to see. People that don't use a system that checks steer ahead, they use a system that's just looking side to side, and they set the toe and it's not steered perfectly straight, and oops, now they got too much towing when they're actually driving down the road. So steer ahead's important. Very close to 0 before you finish that adjustment. So this truck really doesn't need an adjustment. It's at 11. Our perfect number's 9. I wouldn't even mess with it. There's no point in trying to kill ourselves and stress this tire rod out. Somebody sent this tire rod at one time or another and did a pretty decent job.
That's your variance is the .03 to 13 there?
Yeah, exactly. So your tow rate should be at 9, but your plus or minus is, I believe, 5 of it. It's 9 plus or minus 5. Or actually, this is 10. It was 10. It's your perfect number. It's either 9 or 10. Most trucks are 9 or 10. Okay. Right? And you usually have a tolerance of 03 or 04, sometimes 05.
So if you're low, are you towed out?
No, if you're negative, you're towed out.
Negative, you're towed out.
Yeah, negative's towed out, positive is towed in. You never want negative. You'll never set a truck up negative, right?
Because you always want
because the road friction will drive it out even more. So you'll get big time negative when you drive. You always want to, oh yeah, this is it. That's my checklist right there. Somebody did print it out. That's a good thing.
Yeah, Eric gave a copy to everybody.
Oh, so you guys already have that. Yeah. So that kind of explains some of the stuff we're talking about. I'll email it to you too. That way you have it on your phone. You can look at it. So yeah. So what we're saying here is individual toe should be close to 0, but less than plus or minus. Now that is with flip it back. That's the asterisk to the previous. Yeah, rear axle. So rear axle toe should be close to 0, right? I mean, it's a straight axle.
Yeah.
So you see that big phrase there? Camber high, caster low, that's the way the truck will go. On this truck, we had camber and caster. The caster was almost even, and the camber was pretty close to each other, a little bit off, with mostly floor pitch. That can cause a pull. Both those angles can cause a pull. Setback can cause a pull, camber can cause a pull, and caster can cause a pull. Thrust and scrub can also cause a pull. Really, it's a push.
How much is the crown of the road?
I'm glad you're asking. You're asking a lot of good questions. So there used to be a philosophy of we're going to align the truck to the crown of the road. That's part of what you were talking about earlier, where you set the axles up in a V formation to drive it up the crown. Let me ask you a question. What's the crown on every road?
Depends on the road.
Depends on the road, right? Look at I-90. If you're driven down I-90 out east of here, it's almost completely flat.
Yeah.
It's all grooved. We're going to grooved highways now.
They got that pavement that just lets water right through it.
Exactly. So they don't have to have a crown on a lot of places. So that old school thought of we're going to align to the crown of the road is really not into play. If the guy's driving in the right lane, the crown's different than if he's driving in the middle lane, or if he's in the left lane. So we don't do that. We align it to the spec, right? That's the engineers that engineered this truck. They came up with a spec for that front axle to make the truck drive the way they want it to drive. That's what we align to. Some people get tricky with it and overthink it. No, align to the spec. The spec is what you're shooting for. So, simple. Okay, we don't need to adjust this tie rod behind it. So this is it's a fighting process. You guys fought those backs. It'll be twice as hard to do this front. I'm just telling you. Luckily on this design, you probably could stand up inside the wheel well here. Just understand you can't block these sensors. So if you're going to stand here, put a pipe wrench on the tie rod, you can't block this cross wheel. Okay? Because these sensors not only look front to back, the front will look side to side. You're going to put an arrow like this. So you can do it. Takes a second. This system pulls each sensor before it reports, so it does take some time for it to pick stuff up sometimes. Come on. Take it out. There we go. Transverse toe beam is blocked because fat guy's in the middle. Fat guy gets out of the way, and then the arrow messes with the
If for any reason we had to jack the front end of this thing up in the middle of alignment, does it, as long as you reset it when you set it back down, does it
yeah,
make a
if you got to jack it, let's say you whatever the
something
case is,
happens,
you got to jack it up. The sensors are attached. That's fine. When you put it down, just make sure you re-level the sensors. Yeah,
okay.
Because they're going to be. They might rotate a little bit or something. Just make sure they don't bang on their butt. These should stabilize pretty well right where they are.
Okay.
When you're doing a tie rod adjustment, toe adjustment, it says right here, steer ahead, level and lock the sensors of adjusting toe. So the sensors are already locked because we swept a camber or a caster, so they should stay locked during the process. If they're not locked and one dips down below the other, it changes the distance side to side. Right, so we want to level with each other. So we'll set that toe in and out. It's exactly that. We're really small numbers, guys. The tolerances on trucks are half of what they are on a car. A car, most toes on a car is 1500s. We're 900s. We're almost half that. So trucks require tighter tolerances because their tires are bigger and their wheelbases are a lot longer. The forces generated by being off a little bit on the truck are way more than being off a lot on a car because they've got tiny little wheelbase. So that's why it's so picky. All right, now we're at the point. What have you got for questions, guys?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, so I'm going to spin this a little more. We can all stand up here. Go ahead and hit print. You've got choices of printouts, guys. Hunters, this is, you guys are going to be doing almost all in-house alignments, just on your own fleet or fleets as you have. So your printout's going to be different than somebody that's in a retail alignment condition. So this, first off, make sure that that's almost dead center because we have a really small toe number. Our toe number on this truck is what, 11? If we're steered a little bit too much before we hit print, let's say we're steered a little bit off to one side and one side is reading 3 and the other side's reading 8, the side that's reading 8 is going to be red here, individual toe, okay? We don't adjust individual toe, we adjust total toe. But if you steered a little bit, it's going to show individual toe being greater on one side than the other. So avoid that by getting that damn near dead nuts. And all you got to do is usually just bump the tire, come out here, just give it a little thump, and then get it centered up. So you have, this is a common printout that everybody's seen. You guys might have even gotten from All Pro down the street where they got the bar graphs on there. I like, I'm trying to do this. That's the shit out. I kind of like this guy. That's my favorite printout. It's the technical printout. It's going to be what, one page instead of two. It's going to show before and after right next to each other, and it's going to show setback, which you're not going to see on any other printout. Setback's an important diagnostic number. I want to see it. So I normally recommend printing that out for your own trucks. For retail trucks, you can use either the bar graph one that was here before, where you're going to have before and current. Here's what your current looks like. Here's what your before looked like, right? Or you can also do this new one, which is actually really great for selling this stuff. So here's your before. Now, a lot of numbers aren't on there anymore, right? We've eliminated all the fudge numbers there that people don't necessarily need to see. But we've got our thrust, scrub, total toe, and here's your after. Very easy. It's a very easy thing for a customer to visualize, right? You guys probably won't really have customers, so I still think you're better off sticking with this one. Printers in here. Right here, print. Let's get our printout. It saves it. Now, when it saves it, you want to make sure you hit reset, because it will overwrite the same alignment over and over again if you don't. It'll show it as a different alignment, but your before measurements will all be the same as this truck. And I'll look through your, you guys will say, hey, we're having some questions, and I'll come up and I'll look through your history going, it's all the same damn truck. You guys didn't hit reset. So hit reset. And this thing should be, yeah, working on it. That's it, guys. That's an alignment, right? Challenges are getting the adjustments made. Honestly, this part here, remember, middle sensors straight up and down. Doesn't matter what you do with the other ones. Unlock them, stage the truck correctly, get it in the right spot, wheel chock in place, truck pusher in place, all that stuff in the preliminary setup. You got to do that right. That only takes about 3 minutes to 4 minutes to do. It doesn't take that long, okay? You can measure a truck at 5 minutes or less and know exactly what you need to do. Very simple. Doing it is a challenge. So now that alignment is stored in here. So go ahead and hit this magnifying glass in the middle of the screen. There's a lot of hidden menus in here, guys. I've set the system up to be very simple to operate and guide you through the process the easiest way. There's a lot more stuff hiding. And when you have a few minutes, you can poke around doing it and check out what's there. Anytime you want to reset, if you get to the point where like, oh shit, I'm lost in the software, you just hit the escape button. It says, do you want to reset? You say yes. That's it. So it'll get you back out. You can go down the rabbit hole, come back out real easy. So you see what we got here. We got your original first line, which is begin alignment, which we normally would hit. But we also have this line here. Click work management. Work management's your history. It's your database of all the alignments that you've done. You can search here with a lot of different search fields, search parameters. You can do odometer, unit number, that's a good one. Technician, license plate, VIN, company name, work order number. So all those are searchable fields. You enter the data here, you pick what you want, enter the data here, hit enter, and it tells you what pops up. So this truck comes back, and again, 6 months from now, you do another alignment on it. You want to say, hey man, what did we do last time? What were the numbers last time? Maybe you're seeing some crazy ass numbers, you don't understand it. You can go back in here and look at it. You can view the printout by picking the select printout. Go back and look at whatever one you want. You can reprint whatever one you want. So every alignment you do will be stored in here forever. We've got guys that have been using the systems for 15 years. We've got 10,000 alignments in there, so they'll be stored. Okay, next questions.
I had a question about this real quick.
That's fine. What you got?
It says tire value is not within specifications on here.
It says what value?
It just means the ones that are red
Yeah, this value. So anything that's red is saying, hey, it's out of spec.
Oh. Okay.
Right, that's all. And Hunter kind of pioneered the whole red-green thing, and that's what the whole philosophy. Yeah, so what it's saying is that here's your before. That guy was red.
Yeah.
Now, guess what? He's green.
Okay.
Right? And that's because we were steered off to the side a little bit. It's really, we didn't change the tie rod. So
Right.
your back axle here. Rear axle number 2, furthest back.
Okay.
Came in at 09, left here at 02. So from red to green. Center axle came in here at 17, left here at 01, from red to green. And the important thing is, see that thrust angle? That's your additive or cumulative thrust. Both axles added together. Remember I said 03 or less for each individual axle, and we're okay with that. If we go to 04 on each axle, what ends up happening is this guy will be green, that guy will be green, and this guy will be red because he'll be at 08.
Okay.
The additive thrust will be red at 08. That's how much actual force both axles together are applying to the truck. And right now we're at 03. I'm happy with that, real happy with that. So that's why 03 or less, everything will be green.
Can ride height affect the alignment?
Yes, absolutely can. When we spoke earlier about caster, you can see caster change. So if the rear ride height, if this is your kingpin and here's your frame rail, the rear ride height drops, it's going to bring the caster with it. It's going to increase the caster. If the rear ride height goes too high, it's going to decrease it. It'll also affect your toe because you're rolling the plane of the tire, you're rolling it backwards, so it'll spread it out if it drops back and spread it in if it drops forward. So yes. Doesn't affect toe very much, like 1/100th or so, but yes. So ideally, guys, whenever we're going to do an alignment, we're going to pre-inspect it. We're going to check inflation pressures, we're going to check rear ride height, we're going to check kingpins, we're going to check rear bushings. We're going to do all that before we dig into an alignment, because if any of that's out of whack, we got to correct it first. Kingpins, tie rods, bushings, rear ride height, tire pressure. The tire pressures are really drastically low on one side, more than 10 psi lower than the other, going in the truck. And you're going to see the numbers changing down the camber. So all that is preliminary to an alignment. The nice thing about an alignment system is that if we have something that we didn't see on an inspection, it might show up in the numbers. It could definitely show up with crazy toe numbers or individual. You could have mystery tire wear problems that will be, the numbers don't lie. It's like Shakira's hips, dude. They don't lie. The numbers are right. The truck should be right. We should be able to look at that very first screen after we roll the truck forward and measure our caster and know if the complaint matches the truck. Driver comes in, this thing's pulling to the right. Push it forward, sweep your caster, and look. Those numbers should match what he's saying. If they aren't, something else is wrong. Too tight a brake, maybe the brakes are hanging up. Maybe he's got a tight wheel brake. Maybe he's got, this is a good one because this is something nobody catches. I did a guy up in Lemire, Wisconsin. It's a milk cut. He hauls milk. So his trucks are all Pete's, all old school square nose Pete's, all mint, beautiful pieces of machinery that he dresses up to the, I mean, chrome fucking lights everywhere. He's a nut job. All his tanks are so shiny you could shave it. I mean, they're just beautiful. And there ain't a speck of dirt on them anyway. But his personal truck pulled to the right, and he took it to a company and had him aligned, and it never stopped pulling to the right. I did a demo for him with this system. All the numbers were good. The truck measured nice. This is, it was his gearbox. Spool valve wasn't seating all the way on one side, so he's always applying pressure to one side of the truck. So you let go of the wheel, there she goes. Your gearbox fixed it.
Does air ride on your front axle make any difference with any of that?
Yeah, I can. If the air ride's too low, it's going to change caster as well. So there are procedures for setting air ride height, the actual air ride height. Follow those precisely when you do one of the air ride trucks, because when the air ride drops too low, it rocks the whole truck forward, so it's going to change your toe and your caster numbers. And the air ride trucks are really goofball drive. You ever drive one of the air ride trucks? They're just goofy to drive. They kind of wander up. They're not
really
really.
loose.
Yeah, they're really loosey-goosey feeling. I personally,
Feels like
I would
you're
never.
floating on ice on the road. You know.
Personally, it wouldn't be my choice in the truck, but some guys like them because they like that comfort level. Okay. But yeah, ride height first. It's no different than the rear ride height. You gotta get that front. So.
And then what about truck with three driven axles?
That's in it. Go ahead and hit begin alignment. Then we'll escape out of the way.
You just do the back two and then do the third.
Okay. Yeah, it'll show you the process. So, and then come back to your file. So when you do begin alignment, you're going to select, like if you got a truck with a pusher or a tag. So you just come down here, 1 front, 3 rear, right? You can also do, let's see, that's good if you have a rear axle 3 steer. So 1 front, 3 rear, rear axle 1 steer. That's what you're going to call a tag or a pusher. Consider it a steer axle. Because when you're adjusting on a tag or a pusher, you're not adjusting thrust or scrub like this, you're adjusting toe. That's it. Yeah, you just have a connector bar. Sometimes it's just a piece of, literally a piece of angle on it. The slots cut in. So you're going to treat it as a steer axle.
Okay.
And the system will have you start with that's rear reference. As long as that guy's not a tag or a pusher, you can use it. Okay. It's going to have you do rear axle. Okay. Then it's going to have you do the next forward axle of that.
Okay.
And then you're going to do the front axle. And then you're going to take those front sensors and you're going to move them to that steer axle in the back.
Okay.
You have to use a different type of compensation, or you got to push the truck back to its starting point and start again, which is fine. You can just use the pusher to go backwards. You can push it back forward again when you need to recomp it. So, or you can use 3-point comp it. It's not that hard to push, especially this 4-wheel drive the truck backwards anyway. So you can just back your pusher up and it'll probably follow you out the door. So, yeah, just follow what it says on the screen. But yeah, if you have any of those trucks, just treat it like a steer, and you'll be fine. Yeah, those are only bridge axles anyway. So you guys do a lot of heavy haul stuff here?
No.
Yeah. So
We don't even have any 3
what's the
axles.
primary freight you guys haul? Just dry van stuff?
Dry van, couple reefers.
Okay. Yeah. So nothing heavy. Yeah. The heavy haul trucks, some of them have a little bit higher tow-in spec because the axle weight rating is much higher. They're 18,000-pound axles sometimes. So that wouldn't matter. But that's in the spec. So. Okay, guys. Next questions.
Figuring out what kind of axle the truck has.
That's the hard part, right? I mean, what I can do for you guys, I mean, you guys are working on your own fleet, so you can find out what axles.
We have build sheets with all of them on it too.
When you're doing retail alignments, it's more of a challenge to figure out what axle is underneath the truck, and I usually build a generic spec into the system. That if you just align the truck to that spec, you'll do a good alignment. It may not be exactly what the factory called for, but I'll show you something. I'm glad you guys, you asked me really good questions.
You know, we got some owner out with like some wacky trucks.
Yeah, so you got an owner out, so you come in, you're going to do your begin alignment, last year reference, all that stuff. We're going to cancel out and we're not going to enter the actual data in there. We're going to start work. All right, so I'm going to just use, let's use a freight liner, right? Heavy duty vehicles, okay, liner, here, okay, and let's say it's a Cascadia P3, which is the long Cascadia, the big sleeper. Okay. Bunch of bullshit about setting rear ride height with factory gauge blocks, which if you call the dealership, good luck getting them to sell you. They'll be like, what? Those are the part numbers right there. But that's the proper procedure. Oh, cancel. Oh, I don't want them set. No, cancel. They gotta go up one. I page down this thing. Okay. So the spec on the Cascadia, again, no camber, 3.5, 09. Just think of those numbers. No cambers, 3.5, 09. You're gonna go back, go back to it again, boom, boom, cancel, start work, heavy duty vehicles. So remember, it's 3.5, 09, right? No camber spec. Let's see, go to go to a Volvo, EM. All right, let's say it's got an Eaton axle in it. It's got choices of axles too. Shit about lane departure, ride, radars, we don't have that lightning shit. So what's our spec here? 1/4 degree, 0 degree. Okay, so the other one had no spec in camber. Most trucks are between 0 and 1/4 degree, usually negative. Right, they want them leaning in just a little bit. 4 degrees of caster, so about the same as that other truck, 3.5 to 4. It's only a 1/2 degree difference. This has a tolerance of ±1, so this is 3 to 5. The other truck was like ±1.5. So it's basically like from 2.5 to 5. Same shit. Notice that this spec is missing. The total toe is missing. The reason why is because Volvo, that axle is spec'd, the Eaton Dana axle is spec'd in inches, toe in inches, not degrees. So we need to tell the computer how big a tire diameter it is. If you just put, for any over-the-road truck, if you put 40 in there, right, and you hit enter, boom, there's your toe. If you ever are doing a truck like that that requires that toe adjustment, that toe diameter, which is just the diameter of the front tire, that's all it is, from floor to the top of the tire, everything's going to be 40 except if you got some crazy thing like a 19.5. With a 19.5 measure, just take a tape measure from the floor to the top of the tire, it's about 35, whatever, and put that in that box at the top when you see that yellow line. If you get to the end of the alignment and you forget to do that, your spec will be gray. It won't be red or green. So, you know, let's say you're at 0.5, normally it would be, let's say, red, but it won't show red or green, it should be gray. You're like, oh shit, I forgot that stupid 40. You can always navigate back up to here and put that in. You put it in, then you get back down to the bottom, and boom, red and green. So don't freak out if you ever see that. You guys, if you're doing all this stuff, you're not going to have that problem. But some trucks require a toe reference diameter to be put in. So just pay attention. You see the yellow bar at the top, put 40 in there, unless it is a crazy, you know, if it's a box truck or something, measure the tire. Over the road truck with 11 Rs or something, 40 is good enough. It doesn't change. Between 38 and 42, it doesn't change at all. Below 38, it goes it goes up by 1/10 of a degree. Above 42, it goes down by 100th of a degree. Doesn't matter. So it's tiny changes. That's it. Pretty simple. Reset. Reset. Yes. I don't like that. I gotta find out the resolution on this. It's pissing me off. They had to go to these monitors. We used to use a little more robust monitor, but they stopped making it because of the COVID stuff. So you caught having to adapt to the market that you have. Kind of frustrating, actually.
Call it.
Yeah.